X Ryan Jackson.
Welcome into the Sean&Sean podcast, where we got two average.
I can't even see it.
Well, one average individual, and one extraordinary individual. That would be my esteemed co-host right here, Mr. Sean Cummings. And we like to talk, give our opinions, our amateur opinions on football. Would you like to say something to the worldwide verse out there, Sean?
Oh, thank you guys for coming to our third podcast. We appreciate you coming back and listening to us. Like Sean mentioned, we are amateur. So we appreciate you coming back, and we appreciate you listening to us.
All right, so today we're going to start out with the news that came down. Someone took the job that nobody wants. Made it Mr. David Culley. Now, no. The good news for the Texans is that Mr. Culley he's come from the Ravens. So that's a class act organization. A lot of good stuff right there. The bad news is he coaches the worst squad on the Ravens, their wide receiver squad. I know he's the assistant head coach also, but the wide receivers, and I mean, Sean, you got some tidbits in there about some more of what he's done in the past.
Yeah, I found some fun fact for us. So, our first fun fact is David Culley has been in the league since 1994, and he hasn't called any plays on either side of the ball. Fun fact number 2 is, you remember that year when the Kansas City Chiefs threw receiving touchdowns to everybody else in their roster besides wide receivers? Remember that season? The wide receivers ended the season with 0 touchdown receptions. It was. That was also the year that David Culley was a wide receiver coach in Kansas City. Think about that. Third fun fact for David. No. He was also the quarterback coach for Josh Allen during his rookie season. That year, Josh Allen threw 10 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. Not a good ratio, but I do want to give just a little bit of grace to David Culley because it was his rookie season. Josh Allen was coming from Wyoming. You got to give him a little bit of a break there.
Right.
So I can let that one slide, but this next one is really what makes me think this Houston hiring is very underwhelming. So most recently, David Culley has been the passing game coordinator and wide receiver coach in Baltimore, which is not impressive because Baltimore has been a run-dominant team for the past couple of years, so that's not a good look to begin with. But also, Baltimore has been bounced from the past 2 playoffs because of an inefficient passing game in the playoffs.
I'm going to say, on top of that, if he's the one making like some of those suggestions in the draft room for the Baltimore Ravens, and I'm not trying to take away from Marquise Brown, but A.J. Brown and D.K. Metcalf were out there. I'm just saying, like, I'm sorry. I'm just saying, like, Marquise Brown wasn't going to be Tyreek Hill. He just wasn't. He doesn't have that mass. Not too many guys are built like Tyreek Hill. Yeah, he might be small, but he's thick, and he goes up for it. Like, he fights. That's actually all the praise I've ever given Tyreek Hill personally.
Who on the Houston roster is going to fight for those passes?
I mean, Will Fuller's made of glass.
Yeah, he's also coming back. He's coming back from a suspension, right? He got hit with a 6-game, or is it? That was William Fuller, right?
That was Will Fuller, yeah.
thought
I
it
think he
was.
came back last year, though. I thought he came back.
Yeah.
I think he came back last year, though. I thought he came back.
Oh,
But
yeah, I got.
anyways,
It's gonna bother me now. Hold on, give me a second.
well, as you're looking that up, I'm just gonna say this. We know, unfortunately, for Mr. David Culley, who has worked his way into the position to get this job. I'm sorry, bud, but this is a byproduct of other people not wanting the job. Because the main guys were Leslie Frazier, Eric Bieniemy, and then they hired David Culley.
Who else was interviewing David Culley?
Was anybody like?
Nobody.
Was anybody?
Nobody. No.
You tell me.
Who? Nobody. Nobody was hiring David Culley. No one was interviewing David Culley. I want to know how the Texans kind of finalized on his name as a candidate. I mean, it's not as crazy to think when you realize that they had just interviewed their own backup quarterback, Josh McCown, for the head coaching position over the weekends. So maybe it's not as crazy that they went with this candidate that no one else was looking to interview.
I just saw a Twitter update. I don't know exactly what it is, but it looks like Josh McCown is still in the runnings for something. Hey, don't ask me. All right.
Yep.
All right. Are we ready to move on? You ready to give up on that hunt?
Yeah, well, Will Fuller got popped 6 games, PED. I think he was serving, I think it was 4 or 5 games this current season. He has 2 more to begin the next season, I think, but I can't confirm that. If I can confirm that, I will let you know before we end. But moving on, enough with the Texans. They're a hot mess. Let's stop talking about them.
All right, let's go on to our positional rankings for the 2021 NFL Draft. Today we're doing running backs. So we're going to start with our number 5s. We'll start with you like usual, Sean. Who is your number 5 guy?
Alrighty. So my number 5 running back I have is Michael Carter from UNC. Now he's one half of that UNC rushing duo that they had, and Michael Carter was more of the lightning. He used his quickness all over the field, and I like his upside as a receiver. And I think that's really going to be beneficial for him because he's a little undersized. He's about 5'8". He's under 200 pounds, so he's not going to be able to carry a full load when he gets to the league. He's going to have to be going to one of those teams that use a committee approach. One running back mostly pounds it, and the other one is a receiving threat. He's going to end up being that receiving threat. So I like him as a second-day pick, maybe late round 2, early round 3. That's what I see for him right now. So I got Michael Carter as my number 5.
Oh, you do know I like my UNC guys. Big UNC fan over here. Michael Carter.
I agree with you. I agree with you.
He actually didn't make my list, but dude can run, and he's got more contact balance than people actually realize.
He does. I knew coming into this, I have a feeling that our top 2 are going to be the same. I don't know if we're going to have it in the same order, but I think we're going to have the same 2 people in the top 2. It was just the other 3 that
Probably
had
true.
the question marks because it's a talented group that's entering this draft this year, and we had some people with shortened seasons. We have some people who opted out of the entire season, so there's some question marks there. So I knew we'd have the top 2 the same. Some questions around the 3 through 5, so we differ already. Who do you got at number 5?
Well, my number 5 guy, I have, let me make sure I get this right, Ramondre Stevenson from Oklahoma. He's a big back. He's a big dude, 6 foot, 2 picks. He makes you think of some guy who's going to run in a Pittsburgh offense, just grind out them tough yards, make it hurt for the defender. But he's extremely athletic at the same time.
I like that. He's going to make it hurt. You're going to tackle him. It's nice. It's going to take more than one guy to get him down.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. I like that. I like that.
So, moving on to your number 4 guy.
All right.
Who would that
Number
be?
4.
Who would that be?
That is going to be Kenny Gainwell from Memphis. And some of you are thinking, who? That doesn't sound familiar. And here's why. He was a redshirt freshman last year, 2019. He had a great year. But he didn't play this year. He opted out. He decided that he was going to take the season off, prepare for the draft, so we don't have any 2020 tape on him. So nothing recent, but there's some solid things to look at in 2019. He put up good numbers as a runner and a receiver, so he was a threat in both ways. He rushed for nearly 1,500 yards in that Memphis offense, 13 touchdowns. He averaged over 6 yards per carry. And on top of that, he caught 51, another 610 yards through the air, adding another 3 scores. So I don't think that he's going to be the focal point of a run-heavy offense, but he can definitely be a good receiving back who's able to play out of the slots, really utilize both running and receiving skills. So I have Kenny Gainwell as my number 4 running back.
And he's not my number 4 also, actually. And interestingly enough, when you're a good running back, opting out is not a bad thing, actually. It's the one position where I'd say opting out is beneficial because you're getting less tread on the tires. You know, and especially with the type of back that Kenneth Gainwell is, less tread helps. But it's just me, or is Memphis just turning out running backs that are high quality?
There's a change going on. There's a change going on.
So I won't even show my list right now because it also has Kenneth Gainwell. So we'll just move on to our number 3 guy. Let's see who you have. Let's see how it matches up with who I have.
All right. Like you, I'm a UNC guy, so the number 3 running back I have is Javonte Williams from North Carolina. He is the other half of that rushing duo, and he's more of the thunder to Carter's lightning. So Williams is probably the more physical of the 2 backs. And this past season, he ran for over 1,100 yards, 19 scores. I can see him getting maybe mid-second rounds. And I think he has potential to be a feature back. He's big. He's 5'10". He's 220 pounds. So he's solid. He's going to put a hurt on anybody who's trying to tackle him. And it sounds like he's going to be good in pass protection, too. That can definitely benefit him.
So, my number 3 guy is also Javonte Williams. And as I mentioned with Stevenson earlier, where he's going to make it hurt, Javonte is going to make you frustrated. Because he's also bigger, not as big as Stevenson, but he's got his center of balance is just fantastic. And he will not get tackled by the first guy. It'll be the third, the fourth. Like, it's going to be downfield by the time they're able to take him down. And the dude's got good speed. He's a big back who's not slow. And between Carter and Williams, they had like 50 catches each or something like that? Something crazy.
Yeah, let me find out real quick. Let me see what I can dig up.
UNC used both backs a lot in the past passing game. UNC used both backs a lot in the passing game.
They do, and that's only going to help them when they get to the pros. Because what's going to be more valuable to a roster? Someone who just runs the ball, or someone who can run the ball, but you can also throw it to them? It makes a huge difference.
And pass protect. Both backs can pass protect. But I'm a big fan of Michael Carter. It's just he's just lighter in the aspects of things. Like,
Man, I am slow finding my stats today.
well, as we go on, I'll go to my number 2. You go ahead and check. My number 2 is Najee Harris out of Alabama. And there's nothing to dislike here with him. He's a large, physical back who's got good speed, great hands, can pass protect. Yeah, I mean, total package. Total package right here. This guy's going to be a lead back in the NFL. You know, I mean, he's going to murder some teams late in games. The dude's going to be a solid player. Now we're going to move on from that.
All right, so Javonte.
Unless you have Najee.
Yeah.
But go, you got the stats. Let's hear it.
Yeah, I do. Javonte and Michael Carter both had 25 receptions. So
I
it was kind of
over-exaggerated
even between the two. They both ended up with near 50. Well, you know, you're thinking combined 50. That's what you're thinking. You know, they had a combined 50, and you're right.
You got me.
That was very accurate. Good guess. Yeah.
All right, so
All right.
I have Najee.
My number
and
two. Yeah.
Well, no. So
I have Travis.
We already know you're going Travis Etienne. Let's hear you talk about Najee first, and then we'll talk about Travis.
Najee? All right. So Harris was a running back who had opted to return for his senior season. He had a pretty decent junior year, but it wasn't impressive. I think he was graded as a day 2 draft pick. So he bet on himself. He returned to Alabama for a senior season, wanting to improve his stock, and it worked. Harris's play this season got him into the conversation to be the first running back off the board. He's got the size, he's got the power, he's got the speed, and he even improved in the passing game this past year, both as a receiver and a pass blocker. He looks like a 3-down running back in the league. He runs tall, and when I think of that, I think of another Alabama product, our rushing champion, Derrick Henry.
Derrick Henry's a monster that I don't know can be replicated. I think Najee's got a different aspect to his skill set. I think Najee's a little bit more nimble, but he's not as powerful.
He's got the size, 6'2", 230.
Oh yeah, no, dude's
You're going to feel him.
And now we'll get to my number 1, your number 2, Mr. Travis Etienne. And my whole reasoning for having Travis Etienne is, and here's the thing, people are going to say, well, his hands, and this and that. Travis Etienne can catch. He's just not amazing at it. But you put the ball in this dude's hands, and it's a threat to go to the house every time. You can't like it's just he's a playmaker. I've seen him make like 4 or 5 dudes look stupid. Doing pulling Tony Dorsett type stuff.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Najee is one of those running backs who's going to consistently get you. Yeah, Najee is going to get you 4 to 5 yards a carry. That's going to be pretty consistent. But Travis can get you 30, 40 yards in a second, in
And
a
a
split.
blitz.
He has just that ability to rip off long plays. Yeah, he has the capability to do that.
It's not
He's
even
elusive.
just that, though. It's
He,
also
It's
it's not even just that, though. It's also it's that elusiveness that you're about to talk about. It's like it's the whole aspect to make a defender look dumb in space.
yeah, he's a good runner. He when I think of Travis, I think of Alvin Kamara. That's who comes to mind
Yes.
right now.
I can go with that.
Yeah, and something to keep in mind. Yeah, he could have
All right,
gone
so
in the
moving
draft
on.
last year. He could have been a first-round pick in the draft last year.
He would have been. Now, no. Speaking of backs that aren't on our list, that would have been a possible first-round pick, or definitely a second-round pick, who may have fallen to day 3. Chuba Hubbard. Where you at? He didn't really fall off. He just it wasn't the same.
I don't know about fall off. He came back to earth.
Right.
He had such a monster
Right.
year.
Right.
Why?
Right. But
I don't know.
moving on, we
I don't
got
know why he
another
went
fun
back.
segment out here. So we're gonna, all right. What we're gonna do here is we're picking 3 teams from each division. That made the playoffs, and we're gonna say that they're not going to make the playoffs and why. All right.
Ooh.
So I'll start off.
So we're
this
pretty much
time. I
saying.
always make you go first. So, we'll do the NFC first. So my first team is gonna make a lot of my friends mad. I got a lot of friends gonna be mad at this. Sean over here is going to be very happy about this one. Not that he cares about this team one way or another. But my first one is the Chicago Bears. And if we're overlapped, you go ahead and talk about a team that would be on your list. But first part of this is the Chicago Bears are in QB hell. They will not. I mean, Mitchell Trubisky wasn't good, but he's better than Nick Foles. And where are they going at now? So I mean, things could change. They could sell the farm to get Deshaun Jackson. To get Deshaun Watson. But Matt Nagy is still the head coach. That's my other reasoning. This is a man who's too creative for his own good. Yes, you've got some young players on that defense, but Khalil Mack is not getting any younger. And Allen Robinson in the contract year. You all gonna franchise him? Because he ain't coming back. He ain't just gonna sign a contract. All right, Sean, you want to throw a team out there? Is the Bears one of yours?
No, I'm going to leave my division rivals alone. They've been through enough. I'm going to leave them. I'm going to move on to another team. New Orleans Saints. Yeah. Think about it. A lot of it's going to revolve around Drew Brees.
Again, another quarterback.
He's
situation.
retiring. Well, he hasn't retired yet. I know. He hasn't retired yet, but is anybody really believing that he's going to be back for another year? I don't think he is. And the big question is, who is New Orleans going to hand over that offense to? Is it going to be Taysom Hill? Is it going to be Jameis Winston? I don't know. I don't feel confident with either of them. If I had to choose between those two, I think that New Orleans would go with Jameis, but Jameis doesn't have the same ability that Drew Brees does. He doesn't have the same passing accuracy. He can't lead that offense the same way. So I don't feel confident about that New Orleans offense really doing as well without Drew Brees. Not that Drew Brees made the team. Sean Payton's a genius back there, but when you have a quarterback with Drew Brees' ability and Jameis Winston, you're going to see a drop-off in production. And that NFC South could start heating up. You got Tampa Bay, Tom Brady. The guy's like, what is he, 57 next year? Going to his 20th Super Bowl? All exaggerated numbers, by the way. He's really 43, and he's going to his 10th Super Bowl, which is very impressive.
So, good God.
But he's not going to retire this offseason. Yeah. You know, Carolina and Atlanta could easily improve this offseason, leaving New Orleans as a team who's going to take a step back. So I can't see New Orleans getting to the playoffs next year.
All right, my next team. I am not as gracious as Mr. Cummings here. I will not leave my division rivals alone. The Washington football team will not make the playoffs. One, because this is the NFC freaking East, and we don't have a repeat division winner for like the last, 12 years. It's nasty. So there's that, for instance. Another team in QB purgatory. They need a weapon outside of Terry McLaurin. You know, like, once you shut him down, what you got? You know, and I mean, the secondary is suspect at best.
Antonio Gibson didn't do bad.
Yeah, but I'm talking about in the passing game.
Yeah.
They did find someone.
Yeah, I mean, they really have not many.
Well, yeah, so my next one, Washington football team. Who you got next?
I had the Washington football team as well. It's next year, Dallas is going to take the division. So
I agree.
Alex Smith is a great story. Hearing everything that he came back from his leg injury, all the steps that he had to take to return to the field. I mean, if there's any other inspiring story, I haven't heard it. Hearing everything he came back from. But that story itself is not going to put the team in the playoffs. He's an inspiration, but he can't be the quarterback that leads that team. They need somebody else, and unfortunately, the person they drafted for that spot, they released earlier this year. He's already signed in Pittsburgh, Dwayne Haskins. He wasn't the answer. They need to go back to the drawing board, whether that's the draft, but huge mistake. They had a losing record, but they made the playoffs. So automatically bumped them to one of the last 14 teams to pick in the first rounds. So they're in a bad position to try and find that franchise quarterback in the draft unless they trade up or they trade for one of the quarterbacks this offseason or try and sign a free agent.
Speaking of Alex Smith, more power to him. Made it back in, very inspirational, but have you seen the leg? My man, you're proving what you got to prove. Do some commentating, something like that. I know it's your passion, but I mean, some things are more worthwhile. I'm just saying.
What he did this past year was enough. That was
right. I agree.
He came back. He beat the odds. He beat everything. Him coming back, that was his Super Bowl. That's really what it was.
on to my number 3 team. My most surprising team. You threw that curveball with the Saints. My most surprising team that I'm putting out there is the Seattle Seahawks. And the reason why I'm saying the Seattle Seahawks is, one, the defense is suspect. Their secondary can be carved up. Nasty. Like, their linebackers are still legit. The interior is all right because they're great at stopping the run, but their pass defense is not the greatest. 2, teams figured them out. It's basically that shell. Don't let DK Metcalf or Tyler Lockett get deep. Make Russell take what's in front of him. Russell ain't patient. Russell got that great deep ball, but he won't take the 5 yards? He won't win the way Peyton Manning won the Super Bowl? Another shot at my Bear fans. My bad. But I mean, I'm just saying, like, the Seahawks will need to evolve in some fashion. Because teams figured out how to stop what they were doing. Now, who's your final NFC East? Not East, NFC team.
Before I get to my third team, and you gotta stop picking on the Bears. We're in the Midwest here. That's like half of our listeners right there.
I know. I had a listener tell me he wasn't going to watch. I had someone tell me he wasn't going to watch until you took your hat off.
Oh, well, you see what hat I'm wearing today? I'm a little salty from this weekend. So you see this? Super Bowl champions. Granted, it's not this year. It's from 2010. I had to wear it just because I had to get through this pod somehow, knowing that the Packers had lost. Yeah. Yep. And now you have him, Mike McCarthy. Yeah. Also back when the Packers had a really good defense. So, yeah, there's that.
Let's hear that last team.
So, I also went NFC West, but I did not go Seattle Seahawks. I'm bouncing Los Angeles Rams.
They got their own drama.
You're gone. They do. It was a few factors. One of them was they had just lost defensive coordinator Brandon Staley to the head coaching position on the other side of Los Angeles with the Chargers. So there goes that defense. And really, what carried them most of the year? That defense. Because Jared Goff is not the same quarterback. Yeah. Jared Goff is not the same quarterback.
The same quarterback as what?
There's even some talk. As the one who they had signed that contract extension, the one who got them to the Super Bowl before.
No.
This is a completely different Jared Goff. I don't know what the reason is.
Some more love to my Bear fan buddies. Jared Goff is what we thought he was. Quote the late great Denny Green. This is Jared Goff I always thought he was. Just because you cover up the flaws doesn't mean the wartime's still there.
Yeah, very true, very true. Sean McVay did a good job with him early, getting him to be really more of a game manager who could make the plays, but it just wasn't happening this year. And I think what's going to end up happening is the Rams are just going to begin to implode because they traded away all of their draft capital to bring people, to bring talent into the organization. And now they don't have those draft picks to build, and now you have this big question at quarterback with Goff, and there's the talks of, is McVay not happy with Goff anymore? They headed to a divorce, or I think one of the terms I heard between the two of them is they need marriage counseling, so you know something's going on there where they're not happy together. And they go from a perennial Super Bowl contender to now it's well, is it time to move on for Goff? Is it time to upgrade? Are they really going to put him in a quarterback competition with John Wolford? Really? Really? Their defense has some solid pieces, but it also needs help. And it's like they're plugging their finger into the dam so it doesn't overflow. And it just gets to the point where pretty soon it's going to break. And I think this is going to be the year. Because Arizona, I can see Arizona sneaking into the playoffs next year. And I don't even know if sneaking is the right word to use.
What about San Francisco if they get better quarterback play? And Nick Bosa and all those other guys back. You know, I know San Francisco
Yeah, they have a
cornerback
fully healthy defense.
But I do have an idea that
well, who needs a cornerback when your defense gets the quarterback and gets all the sacks? You know.
True. There is an idea I would have. We'll save it for next week. We'll save it for next week when we do our quarterback trades because
All right.
I have an idea of what can happen from the Rams. Oh yeah. But
all right, I like this idea. Quarterback trades. Yes.
Let's move on to the AFC and the teams that made the playoffs that we think aren't going to make the playoffs. I will start off again, and I'm going to make one of my cousins and one of my really good friends really angry right now. They'll probably turn off the pod at this point because my first team I am saying is the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Pittsburgh Steelers started fast. They looked great. But after a little bit, they started to fizzle somehow. And there were teams like Dallas played them close. Washington football team beat them. In the playoffs, Cleveland dominated them. So there's an issue there that and Ben Roethlisberger isn't the same guy. I don't know if Dwayne Haskins is the answer. The defense is still good, but they've got contract issues that are coming up majorly. So they could be in store for some rude awakenings in Pittsburgh.
I don't know how I feel about Pittsburgh yet, but my first team that's gonna be at the playoffs also belongs to the AFC North. Cleveland Browns. I don't see Cleveland Browns returning just because it's Cleveland, right? If there is any year that they're going to make the playoffs, there is any year they're going to do anything in the playoffs, it was probably this year. The first time they've been to the playoffs since, 2002, the early 2000s? And it just seems like they're that franchise that's destined to have heartbreak every year. They played well when Odell was out. They played better. Their offense seemed to move better. But Odell's coming back. Maybe they're not going to be as productive, as smooth, as a well-oiled machine. So,
we'll see what happens.
Granted, there's no guarantee that Odell's going to return.
No, we'll see what happens. I'm not as down on Cleveland as you are there. I think, give them another year. This is a young team building with a first-year head coach. Let's be honest. So let's see what happens. So who's up next? Who's up next?
Right.
So my next team that I would put, let's see, in AFC, just to put my finger on it. I'm actually going to go with the Indianapolis Colts. But this is TBA. again, I don't. The quarterback's retiring. Well-coached team. They played well. They didn't. They weren't the dominant team in their own division. Like they didn't win their own division. And I mean, and now their quarterback's retiring. So I mean, we'll address some of that next week. But for this week, that's one of my teams that isn't going to make the playoffs.
Ooh, see, I have to disagree with you on that one because I think Indianapolis is making the playoffs next year because who I'm projecting to be their quarterback next year. So we're gonna hold you in suspense just a little while longer.
But he's not their quarterback yet.
Not yet. Not yet. So that's where the suspense comes in. You guys are gonna have to come back and listen next week to find out who do I think is going to be the Colts quarterback next year, helping them return to the playoffs. So I think there's hope for the Colts. But I'm dropping another AFC South team, the Tennessee Titans.
I saw that. Yeah.
Titans. Oh. They, Arthur Smith, he did such a great job running that offense, building it into what it is. He revived Ryan Tannehill's career, but he's taking his talents to Atlanta. While Ryan Tannehill and his team stay in Tennessee, I don't think they're going to perform quite as well as they did this year. I don't think that they're going to have the scheme to get Derrick Henry 2,000 yards. I don't think Ryan Tannehill is going to be as efficient. I think the offense is going to change, and it's not going to change in a good way.
All right, so my next team. All right, I'm going to say something crazy. I'm going to say something nutty. I'm going to also
You're going to say Kansas City?
agree with Tennessee. I'm also going to agree with Tennessee. So I've got Indy and Tennessee out of the playoffs. And a little preview for next week. Because next week we're also going to be doing teams that didn't make the playoffs that will make the playoffs. And yes, I have one of those other two AFC South teams making the playoffs with their new head coach. Now, that being said, I agree with you. Arthur Smith did a lot for them. I think there's no. Derrick Henry's a monster, but I think they schemed quite a bit in that running game to get him into space and able to deal with like smaller guys like defensive backs and whatnot. Also, who's the pass rusher on that team? You know, I know that Clowney was supposed to come in and take on that role. Harold Landry is supposed to be that role, but you know, and then the defense isn't where it needs to be. And so that's where I'm at. Who's your next one?
Ooh, who's my third team? Now, this is tough because there's only 7 teams that make the playoffs in each conference. We're thinking half of these teams got to go, at least in this scenario here. I mean, you're thinking Chiefs are going back. Like, the Chiefs are going to the Super Bowl for the next 10 years that Patrick Mahomes is under contract. So, you know, it's not going to be the Chiefs. You know, I already think the Colts are coming back. I bounced the Browns. I bounced the Titans. Bills, yeah, they're going to be back. For me, it's coming down to Pittsburgh and Baltimore. Yeah. So pretty much I'm saying 2 teams from the AFC North aren't returning to the playoffs next year.
This is what you're saying.
Ooh, this is tough. Yeah. Tough. Lamar Jackson is still young. They're going to be a run-dominant team. I think that they're still going to be able to make the playoffs, so I got to agree with Pittsburgh. I do. I think as much as Ben Roethlisberger is going to try this year, because with how the season ended, I know there's talk
You got
about
Pittsburgh to
he's
turn it back
going to
on.
retire. He wants to retire. Yeah, I don't think he's retiring, though. I think he just took that loss very hard because he knew that they were capable of going further. And here they were getting beat in the first round by Cleveland. And if
Getting beat.
what's worse than getting beat by
Getting beat.
a division rival in the playoffs, the first round?
You mean beat down.
Yeah, so I think that really... But then they also have some free agents coming up. Villanueva's becoming a free agent. You have, Williamson and Dupree as linebackers becoming free agents. Juju's becoming a free agent.
There's a lot.
James Conner? Where are they going to put that money? Who are they willing to re-sign? Who are they willing to bring back? And yeah, it's going to take people restructuring to get some of those people back in. It's going to be a really tough situation, and look at Green Bay over the past couple of years. Green Bay hasn't really added much offensive talent to their team, and what happened to them? They get to the playoffs, but they just can't get it done because they don't have enough offensive talent. So when you're telling a team that you can't sign any more offensive players...
Speaking of, hold up. We're going to move on. That was the end of our segments there, but I'm going to give my my good friend here a little soapbox to stand on. Then a little bit about his Green Bay Packers.
Oh, man.
Take a couple minutes, Sean.
So you want my playoff thoughts? That's what you want. You want my thoughts. All right. All right. Ooh. All right. So, although my team did not win the Super Bowl, let alone advance to the Super Bowl, I gotta say, this has been one of the more exciting postseasons in recent memory. Right, this past weekend, we saw the 4 best teams in the conference championship round. We saw 4 of the best quarterbacks in the league leading those teams, and this is one of those rare years, where whatever that matchup looked like in the Super Bowl, it was going to be a good matchup. But you know what else we saw? We saw the 2 best teams advance to the Super Bowl. And as much as that pains me to say, we saw the 2 best teams advance. So yeah, I'm a little salty by the outcome, but I want to congratulate Tampa Bay. The Buccaneers were the better team this weekend. How did they get to the Super Bowl? They had to win 3 consecutive road games in the playoffs, and that's challenging no matter what year it is. And congrats to them, because they are now the first team in history to truly have home field advantage during the playoffs. So, back to my saltiness, back to Green Bay losing. There's a lot of talk of who's to blame. Where do you put that blame? And people want to blame LaFleur. And what they're going to look at is, what did you do in the fourth quarter when there was 2 minutes to go in the game? That's the big elephant in the room. But for me, this loss doesn't get put on Matt LaFleur. Does he deserve some of the blame? Yes. But he was the one dropping passes. He wasn't the one fumbling the ball away. He wasn't the one giving up the sacks. He wasn't the one taking the sacks. He wasn't the one missing the tackles. He wasn't the one getting beaten coverage. So let's make that clear. But he's got to take some responsibility for how he called that game, how he called it. Now, elephant in the room, you're kicking a field goal on 4th and goal with just over 2 minutes remaining in the game. You're trailing by 8, and you're on the 8-yard line. And let's be honest, we're only hyper-focused on this possession because of how it ended. This was the final possession the Packers had. They didn't get the ball back. They didn't have a chance to go down the field again. This is where it ended for them. Had other drives turned out differently, we wouldn't even be talking about this. But he got too, what's the word? Not that he was scared, but he was conservative. What I liked when he came to Green Bay was he comes in and says, we're going to be all gas, we're going to be no brakes. Guess what, buddy? You pumped the brakes in the fourth quarter. You pumped them hard. You gave the entire locker room whiplash. You pumped the brakes. So that coaching philosophy, gone. What does Bruce Arians say? No risk it, no biscuit. And it paid off for him. Not the same for LaFleur. So it sounds like there was miscommunication at the end of the game. Aaron Rodgers may have thought that they were in 4-down territory. He had one more play to go. LaFleur had a different thought. And that's okay. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with him choosing the field goal in that moment because the Packers offense wasn't getting it done. When you think the final 3 possessions they had, 3 and out, Aaron Rodgers takes a sack. 3 and out, Aaron Rodgers takes a sack. And then they get down to the 8-yard line. But Aaron Rodgers' efficiency during that time frame wasn't there. He wasn't able to hit targets. He didn't have a chance to even find his primary target because he was too busy getting crushed by that Tampa Bay defense. He just didn't have the time. So I understand that Matt LaFleur didn't feel confident in Green Bay's ability to score a touchdown and get a 2-point conversion. So what he went for was the automatic points. I'm okay with that. Part that I don't like,
But here's the thing.
and I'm not sure if he fully thought this through.
But here's the thing. For me, here's the thing. You said the 2 best teams went on, and this is most likely true. But also with the 2 teams that went on, also have a philosophy of is gas pedal. Green Bay to a lesser extent. Here's the thing. That decision that LaFleur did, if this was a regular season game, I got no issue with it. If this is a regular season game, that shit that happens. There's stuff that happens. The problem is this is the playoffs. This is not just the playoffs. This is the NFC championship game. You got to put all that on the line.
No matter what round it is, it's win or go home. No matter what round it is in the NFL playoffs, you got one game. You got one chance. You're either winning or you're starting your vacation early. Andy Reid, what was it, 4th and 1 against the Browns with his backup quarterback, decided to run a play rather than punt the ball. And not that he didn't trust his defense, but he knew his quarterback could get it.
But on top of
that didn't stop him.
I'm worse on Sean McDermott than I am on the floor.
Yeah.
Sean McDermott had what? 5 times? With like, what was it? 4th and 5 or less? And you gonna kick against the Chiefs?
Yeah.
Someone explain that.
But you know what the the similarities and the differences? It was funny because, not funny, haha, but funny, peculiar, that Buffalo and Green Bay suffered the same fate. They had conservative play calling. They went for field goals when they should have been more aggressive, going for touchdowns. And it backfired on them. But why? Their offenses weren't getting it done because the teams lack offensive weapon. On Buffalo, who is Josh Allen going to throw to besides Stephon Diggs? In Green Bay, who is Aaron Rodgers going to throw the ball to besides Devontae Adams?
Here's where I got to stop you. And you know something? You're right, because I found out something after the game. Normally it'd be Cole Beasley. In that range that we're talking about, Cole Beasley is money. But apparently he hurt himself in the game. Now, we could probably rant on over and over and over, but, we're running to the end of our time here. Sean, 8 words of wisdom for the people?
Words of wisdom, wash your fruits and vegetables. There's my words of wisdom. And sign offensive talent if you're the GM of the Green Bay Packers. Not going to name any names, but if you're listening out there, highly doubt it. If you are, please sign some offensive talent so our quarterback can do something this year and not throw every target to Devontae Adams. The defense knows it's going to come to him every play, and you're leaving yourself handcuffed. So if you want to win a Super Bowl anytime soon, please get your quarterback more talent.
Make sure you get those high efficiency toilets.